Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of Market Monday. I thought I'd like to talk about this spoiled card today. I think that it has a lot of potential for spiking some other cards that go along with this card. I don't think that it's going to do much to any sort of standard cards, and I actually don't think that this card is that great in the modern shell that you'd want to put this in. I think that the black-blue mill deck is about as good as it's going to get, and I don't know if they want a 4 mana cost sorcery. That's a little bit rough, even though it does do 13 cards. So let's just check out this card. It's called Startled Awake, and it says target opponent puts the top 13 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And then you put Startled Awake from your graveyard on the battlefield transformed, activate this building as a sorcery spell, and then so it turns into a 1/1. And if it can do combat damage, then you can return it to your hand to then mill some more. So it's just, in a blue-black mill deck, you're using a lot of 2-drops, like Breaking and Entering, and you have Mind Funeral, which is 3, Mesmeric Orb. But let's take a look at the deck list. Had a list of cards here. Let me pull it out of what cards this could actually work with. But the card spikes don't actually have to mean anything. Like it doesn't mean that this card has to actually see play or make a deck a tier 1 or a tier 2 deck in Modern to spike the price of other cards. It just means that people will get excited about a card or a potential of a card and then start buying for pieces around that card. So I think the Startled Awake works perfectly for that type of hype. And let's just check out the list here. On MTG Goldfish, there was a... See if it's down at the moment. So I'm just going to pull up the Mind Funeral deck in Modern. And there is a black-blue mill deck that did see play in a Modern tournament. This is a Modern daily. It went 3-1. Yeah, this is a very, very typical list of blue-black mill. And so the all-stars in this deck are going to be Hedron Crab, and then this one uses Snapcaster because you can actually Snapcaster back one of these cards. And so maybe that's where this card could find a home in, is instead of Snapcaster Mage, because you'll be playing 4 mana usually for Snapcaster Mage. But Snapcaster is more versatile because it can get you like Visions of Beyond and Surgical Extraction back for less. But here is just the list. You have Breaking and Entering because he does 8, so it's just slightly better than a Mind Sculpt, which does 7. And then Archive Trap, which is a free spell if they're using fetch lands. So if an opponent searches his or her library this turn, you can pay 0, and target opponent puts the top 13 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And then there's Mind Funeral, which is another one that usually gets quite a few cards. Target opponent reveals cards from the top of his library until 4 lands. So if you think that every third card in Modern is a land, this usually gets up to 12 cards. And it can actually get way more, but it could also get way less depending on, there's the luck factor to it. And then Mesmeric Orbs, whenever a opponent becomes untapped, they put the top card of their library into their graveyard. And so this is just like the longevity of a game. If it goes on for more than a few turns, they're going to end up milling quite a bit. But I don't know if I even like Mesmeric Orb in these mill type strategies. One thing you can do with Mesmeric Orb is mill yourself. I know that people have done that in the past to put a bunch of cards in their own graveyard for that type of strategy. But you would have to get, for this to really become worthwhile, this would have to go on till, I would say, 4 turns by the time it gets the same amount of value that a Mind Funeral or the Glimpse of Unthinkable gets. Well, maybe more like 3 turns, but Glimpse does 10, and so Archive Trap does 13, Glimpse does 10, Breaking does 8, and that's kind of the gist of the deck. So I don't know if a 4 mana spell actually fits in this, but again, it's not going to make people, it's not going to stop people from trying, and it's also not going to stop people from, when they do crack this pack, from trying to go a mill deck with it. We saw the exact same thing even with Whispering Madness and Breaking and Entering when those came out. The card prices of Archive Trap and some of these Glimpse went up in value. So there's also some other cards you could invest in. What I really think is a great investment is Breaking and Entering. It's had a steady growth for a while now. It was a foil and a regular. Let's see if we can pull it up here. And yeah, so it's the regular has been around 60 cents. Yeah, it's been flat for quite a while. It was actually worth more. And we could start seeing this card go up more in value in the long term, just because it was out of Dragon's Maze, and Dragon's Maze just wasn't a set that was opened very much. So let's go back to the list here. I think some other good pickups. Mesmeric Orbs seem pretty reasonable at $6 a piece. I don't see them going up much. Glimpse is really the tough card here because it's the expensive card. And so 30 bones a piece for Glimpse of the Unthinkable. It's going to be hard for those two. This could actually go up. I don't suggest investing in it. I think that this is really right for a reprint at $30 a piece, and it's perfect. It's exactly where Mill wants to be at 10 cards for 2 mana. Maybe they just consider this a little too powerful for Mill. And Visions is also another card that has spiked more recently. And you draw a card. If you have 20 or more cards, you draw 3 cards. It's a nice little cantrip card and ends up being an ancestral recall if you actually have 20 or more cards in if a graveyard, so if your opponent even has it. So the Crab has been spiking lately. Hedron Crab is really good for self-mill strategy. But I would say Break and Entering is the prime target, or Archive Trap at around $7. I think this card has a lot of room to grow if a lot more people are trying to build mill. And same thing with Mind Funeral. This was also an uncommon out of Modern Masters 1, I believe. Or was it 2? It might have been Modern Masters 2 that the Mind Funeral was there. So, nope, it was Modern Masters 1. And they're already up to about $4 a piece, so I could see these spiking a lot more because Modern Masters 1 was a very, very low printed set, and so was this Alara Reborn. There wasn't a lot of packs open from either one of those sets, so it has you have to consider that card more of as a rare than an uncommon because of the sets that it was printed in. And then there's also some cool cards that, as far as like the mana base, the Shelldock Isle and the Falli Drownyard have a lot of potential, both of them, and they just... It's very easy to fix your mana base with the Polluted Deltas and Watery Graves, so these are just nice cards. The Shelldock Isle especially has Hideaway, and you may play the remove card if the library has 20 or fewer cards in it, so it can be your finisher late game. And first turn, you don't really need to do much. Hedron Crab, of course, would be your best first turn play, but you can easily just put this into play tapped in like third turn and still cast a spell, and then it can be your finisher like fourth or fifth turn. You can activate this, and then for like another Archive trapped underneath it or something else. So Mill is not my cup of tea, of course. There's a lot of ways to shut it down. I always love facing Mill with like the Tooth and Nail. They do have the Surgical Extraction to get beyond that. Why I love it so much is that if they mill my Emrakul, then everything gets shuffled back into my library, and then they have to go through the entire process of trying to mill me again. So there's that. And this deck also gets really shut down to Leyline of Sanctity. I mean, Leyline of Sanctity would completely make your opponent incapable of targeting you, and most of the spells in your deck are target. So target player puts top 10, target player, target opponent, target player. Yeah, so there's that. Nothing too much, I think, in the form of sideboard that I'd invest in, but just keep it on your radar. I think that spoiler season is always a great time to look at what cards actually synergize with some of these spoiled cards. We have some great spoilers out so far. Nahiri was just spoiled. I'm going to do a spoiler video later on this week. Pretty busy. I'll talk about that later, why I've been so busy, but I think that it is worthwhile, at least. That would be my, for this week's market update, the Market Mondays, I guess we're going to call it. This would be my pick, to go ahead and look at these breaking and enterings and see if they're worthwhile picking it up, because I think that the casual players love mill, and every time a mill card is spoiled, that's when all the rest of the mill cards, especially cheap mill cards like Breaking and Entering and maybe even Mind Sculpt, other than Mind Sculpt's been printed twice as a common, could go up significantly in value. And that's where I still like penny stocks. Penny stocks are kind of where I've made the most out of speculating on. I'm not a huge time, I don't have deep pockets, so I'm not one of those people that was able to buy every fetch land when they're $15 a piece and then they spiked up to 30. But I was able to buy into like Hellrider when it was bulk rare, and buy into Stony Silence when it was a bulk rare, and Rest in Peace when it was a bulk rare, and Gavany Township when it was a bulk rare, and made a killing off all of those cards when they did go up to their, $3, $4, or $5 when I got out of them. So I think Break and Entering is a prime example of that type of card that is bulk at the moment, being around 50 cents a piece, that has a lot of potential in these type of mill decks, even if they never even come to fruition. It's the casual players eat this stuff alive, and casual players are known for actually shelling out a pretty penny for these type of decks. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this Market Monday update. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.